Welcome to EDO Breakthrough, the podcast where we tackle economic development challenges head on. From small towns to bustling cities, every place has its own hurdles to overcome. The EDO Breakthrough podcast creates an environment of collaboration, innovation, and understanding where we can share our real-life challenges and brainstorm solutions. I'm your host, Sandy Dubé, a certified economic developer and founder of PPR Strategies. Each week, we'll be welcoming a different, brilliant, place-based mind to talk through real-life economic development challenges that have been shared with us by you, our gracious listeners. Today, we are heading to Bath, England to talk about the business improvement district that is in Bath and all of the amazing things. Today, we are welcomed and joined by Allison Herbert, Chief Executive of the Bath Business Improvement District, or the Bath BID. Welcome, Allison.
It's lovely to be here. It feels very strange to be in my office and talking to you so far away.
I know when we did our first interview, our first meeting I was in your office, and my partner Bob and I have recently purchased a flat in Bath and love everything about it. Fell in love with the community and are now making it, a second home for us. And so we got to meet Allison in person. So Allison, tell us a little bit about you and your experience in economic development in this ecosystem and what brought you to Bath.
So I've been working for the Business Improvement District for about 8 years now, I think. But my background prior to that was very much economic development. I was called an EDO, an economic development officer. I worked in 2 different councils. My particular specialism has always been communications and creating partnerships with businesses, and that's events and places where businesses come together, I guess, but all looking at the wider benefit. And I think economic development is a really interesting challenge. And how you define it, I think is really interesting, because do we know if the economy is developing, and actually is what we're doing able to influence locally when the national or international kind of trends are, pushing us around like seaweed in the sea. So I often worry, I suppose is probably the right word, but I often think about, the impact of what we're doing. And we try really hard to focus on quite practical things here at the BID, because we know that if there's an issue that's that's grinding away at businesses, that's causing them problems, or those really touchy issues that are quite difficult, intangible sometimes, but quite difficult to fix on your own. Sometimes a business improvement district, by bringing everybody together and having that kind of lobbying and leverage opportunity, can fix. So that's what I really try and bring to this role. And personally, I've always worked in the Southwest. I'm not from the Southwest originally, but I don't know if everybody knows where Bath is. It's quite funny, actually. Bath is very close to Bristol, which is a much bigger city. I think it's 3 million population. Bristol. Bath is only 89,000. But if you go abroad and say to people, I'm from Bristol, and they say, where is that? And you say, near Bath, which we quite love. So there was a rumour at one point that Bristol Airport was going to rename itself Bath Airport, because actually that was more meaningful to its international customers, which we love in Bath. But generally, we work very collaboratively with Bristol. It's a really good kind of 2-city destination, in fact, for international travellers. So it's worth us working together, and we're all within the same regional mayoral authority, and quite a lot of the government funding is now directed via the regional mayoral authorities. So particularly economic development funding, but funding for roads, funding for skills, and those sorts of things comes through that channel. So it would be really silly if, as cities, we weren't working really closely together. So there we are. That's a bit of background.
It's so funny that you say we would be silly, but there are places in the United States that are silly and that do not work collaboratively as much as they should. And so I love that you see that as as your region, as your area, as your partner. That is how it should be done in more places. So to give you a little bit greater context, Bath and Bristol are about like an hour and a half train ride or car ride from London. And then, yes, Bath is like I think it's 12 minutes and 12 pounds train ride from Bristol.
Yeah.
So, which makes it super accessible and lovely to see. One of the things that Bob and I fell in love with Bath was the ongoing population. You said just shy of 90,000 people. So it feels intimate, it feels small, it feels neighborly. But talk about the visitors, the influx of visitors that you receive on a regular basis.
So obviously, Bath is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, I often think about who does Bath belong to? So I think if you talk to the residents, Bath definitely belongs to the residents. And if you talk to the rest of the world, Bath belongs to the rest of the world. It's it's an international heritage location. So it belongs to all of us. And we get almost, it depends on who you listen to, but we get around 6 million visitors a year. And a lot of those go straight to the Roman baths, a significant proportion, I think over 1 million visitors a year for the Roman baths. So that's really important visitor destination. And it's one of the reasons that Bath is recognised. But the other two things that Bath is recognised for from a UNESCO perspective is the architecture. So the bit that you will have all seen, hopefully, in Bridgerton is the architecture of Bath. So, and that's what I love about it is you can have a cultural experience just walking around Bath. You can feel that you're in a different place. It feels really authentic, and people will stop you in the street once you become more familiar and say, "Where did the Duke propose when he was sitting on a horse?" And sadly, I've only watched a few Bridgerton, so I'm not the perfect expert, but I can tell you where Lady Danbury's house is, and those sorts of things. So that authentic 18th century architecture is really well protected in the city. So from a business and economic development perspective, that's both a bonus and a complete pain in the neck, because obviously we would like to be able, shops would like to have an interesting shop front, and they would like to put flashing lights on day and night and make sure everybody notices them. And actually, it's worth preserving the heritage because that's what brings the 6 million visitors. And then the other thing, which is often a surprise to people, and Sandy, you kind of reflected on it slightly, is the fact that we're surrounded by the green hills. So it's the views into Bath that are protected. And that's why we don't really have any skyscrapers, because the minute someone suggests a skyscraper or a very tall building in Bath, everybody says, "Oh, no, UNESCO wouldn't let us have that because it would interrupt the view into the city." And so that's something, Bath is in a bit of a bowl, surrounded by 7 hills with the river running through it. And they reckon that's why the Romans loved it. It reminded them of Rome, apparently, like the 7 hills of Rome. So, pardon me. And obviously, the really big thing about our Roman culture is that Bath has hot water spurting out of the ground. It comes out of the ground at 37 degrees. It's actually too hot. So they use it to heat things. You're not allowed to bathe in the water anymore. People did until the 1970s, but they use the water to heat things. So there is a thermal spa using the natural spa heat, and creating their kind of typical experience for a contemporary audience. The Roman bars, steam comes off them while you're standing there. And then after the spa water has been to the Roman bars, it gets piped under the abbey. So it provides a really sustainable, eco-friendly heating system that goes under the floor of Bath Abbey. And then it spits out into the river. And we have an extremely large fish because it's so lovely and warm in our river. And the river, astonishingly, is, considering it's right in the middle of a city, is very successful. We actually have otters living in the river. So
I did not know that. Oh,
well, you'll probably spot them if you're up early in the morning. So that just means that there are fish in the river. So it must be healthy. So it's really interesting because we think of it as a very urban setting, but actually it's got this quite strong green credentials. And as a visitor, if you came this summer, well, you presumably came this summer when it was really hot, it's actually quite easy to get away from the heat, walk along the canal, walk along the river, walk up into the woods surrounding the town. And it's got a bit of everything, which is rather marvellous. We're very lucky.
I agree, which is why we kind of, settled on Bath, and, we discovered it by way of Stonehenge. So Stonehenge is, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes ride from Bath, which is, easy and close, and another huge tourist draw in the region. But I would love to back up a little bit. I think we could just talk tourists and those activities all day long, and all the stories that exist and what you've done there. But I'd love to dive in a little bit on the business of, and what a business improvement district is. We have them throughout the world. People think of their Main Street communities, and is a slightly different business model in terms of how you are funded, the services that you are providing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So in the UK, we borrowed from the American model, and business improvement districts were invented in 2003. And we've got our own little bit of law that we have to keep referring to and making sure we stay within the regulations. And basically, it was a mechanism that was created so that businesses in a defined area could jointly invest in programs and campaigns and projects that they defined as having a benefit for their business. So they can have a community benefit, or they can be completely commercially focused. The whole point about business improvement districts is that they are governed and run by the membership. So in order to invest the money that the members put in the way that they find appropriate. And kind of back to a point about working in partnership earlier, it would be silly for us to work completely in isolation. We're in the place shaping space, I suppose. So we have to work with the local authority partners and the police and all of the other kind of actors in that area. But we do have a lot of opportunities to be really flexible, and we can be very reactive to different situations. So our focus, we work on a 5-year cycle. We're allowed to run for 5 years, and then we have to have a ballot. So we're in a funny hybrid place because we literally go to ballot in 2 weeks' time. So my head is full of the new business plan, and in which our focus will be cleansing, kind of obvious, security. Also, I don't know what you're having in the States, but shop theft and antisocial behaviour is a big area of concern for businesses, and kind of progressive, I don't know what the word is, reining in of funding for police in the UK has led to prioritisation of different things. And businesses notoriously have been slow to report crime. And I think that's changed over the last 12 months. So there's a perception that there's suddenly an enormous amount of crime going on. And I don't think it's a sudden change. I think it's just that there's been an awful lot more reporting, because the police are now doing what they call data-driven policing. So if there's no reporting, they won't put any police on the streets. Yeah. And so in order to influence where the police investment priorities are, where they put what we call bobbies on the beat, but, neighborhood police in active and visible locations, you have to keep reporting. So we do a lot of work actually persuading the businesses to go through the slightly bureaucratic pain of reporting every single crime. So cleansing, security, promotion, that's where we work with we have a visitor economy partnership, which we're part of, but we also do some of our own promotion. We run a platform called Welcome to Bath, which is designed really for after people get here. So we're not trying to compete with Visit Bath, who are very much saying come to Bath. We're saying, oh, you're here. Here's what's on. Here, how to make the most of it, and then partnership, which is really important to make the most of the investment and make sure that we're not doing the same as somebody else, duplicating effort, wasting money and all of that stuff. So that's our focus. And I have a team of about 10 people who work with me. So we have someone who's a specialist in all of our areas. So I have a marketing person, I have a security person, I have a operations manager who leads our cleaning team. There are 4 guys in the cleaning team. We have electric vehicles, they go out. So if you arrive in your shop in the morning and there's an unpleasant thing outside I don't know, it could be anything. It could be a dead seagull, it could be a human poo, it could be anything revolting that you don't want to touch because you've got your nice clothes to start the day, open your shop, and you ring us up. We're very old fashioned. You ring us up, we get the guys on the radio and they come out like Spider-Man, clear up the mess, and it's all gone. So within usually 10 to 20 minutes. So people are really appreciative of that. And there's no local authority that could provide that level of kind of active, reactive service. So it's very well loved. And then we have security guards who are out on the street. And I find it really surprising. It's been an area of new work for us. We've only just started working on security so intensely in the last 5 years. And quite often, if somebody has stolen something from a shop and you tap them, well, not me, but if the security team tap them on the shoulder and say, I don't think that's yours, they will just turn around and give it to them. And then the security guards can go and take it back to the shop. So we had the amazing candle hunt a couple of years ago where they'd retrieved a whole box of candles, and we took us ages to work out which shop they'd come from because they were unbranded, but we were absolutely determined we did in the end. But we do try our best to retrieve, and it's thousands of pounds worth of goods that they retrieve every month. So that they really pay for themselves. Yeah, they really pay for themselves. And then obviously that's just reacting to the problem. So we work strategically to try and get in front of the problem, working with the police and encouraging businesses to report, like I said, and all of that stuff to try and have a more visible presence so that people make other choices than shoplifting in the shops in Bath. And about 80%, back to your point about what are the business of Bath, about 80% of our businesses are what you would call high street businesses. So shops or hospitality or hotels or whatever. And so 21% are offices. So interestingly, a lot of Bath is dependent on the tourism pound. So even the lawyers and the accountants, they're servicing the businesses who service the visitor economy. And we listen a lot. We were working on some finance this morning. I was with the comms officer and I said to her, you have to be aware that my anxiety around when we publish numbers is based on 7 years of, AGM questions where you kind of go, you're put on the spot and it's other people's money. So we just have to be so clear about how we're spending. It's 650 members, 650 people's small contributions. The average contribution is, about £1,000. We have around 700,000 pounds a year to spend on the work that we do. So yeah, it's not insignificant for a business to make that sort of a contribution.
Mm-hmm. And, it's not a base tax. It's a tax that everybody has kind of said that they would pay, or an investment that they said that they would pay, that, it would be better for me and my business if I gave you $1,000, £1,000, whatever it is, to help with these issues. You're right. Nobody wants to be cleaning some of that stuff up on the street corners. Nobody wants to be, if everybody had to pay for their own street cleaning right outside of their shop, or pay for their own security, or, all of these things, and then try to promote their location. Yes, all the independent businesses need to do their part and their own storytelling, but as a collective, it's a much bigger story to tell and to share.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're right. And we are able to do things that help to save the money. So one of our schemes is that we did a tender and chose a trade waste management company who come and collect the business waste. In the UK, they're completely separate, household waste and business waste. You're not allowed to put business waste in the household stream. I know we've had this conversation.
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing.
And also the law changed this year, and businesses now are legally obliged to separate their food waste. So we needed to find someone that was willing to come into the city. And Bath isn't terribly easy to get around. There are lots of areas that are pedestrianised. I wouldn't want to be driving a lorry around the city centre, quite frankly. So we needed somebody who was willing to come every day, who was willing to collect food waste, and who was going to give a really good service, and who, in return for us promoting them to all of our membership, would give a really good price. And we reckon we've saved businesses almost £350,000 in the 2 years that we've been working with these guys. So actually, if you make the most of all the things we've got available, if you use the promotional tools that we have, if you send us, if businesses send us their events to promote via Welcome to Bath, and they use the Tradeway scheme, it pays for itself. It's just making sure that they're engaged. So then there's a lot of work to keep finding them and telling them how brilliant we are.
I totally get it. I would love to hear, any lessons learned or things that you're looking, or even just what does the future look like? What does the future look like for you and for Bath and for the bid?
Well, interestingly, in order to write a 5-year business plan, we did a survey. And my board set me this ridiculous challenge that I was only allowed to ask 3 questions, which is a great challenge, but hard. Anyway, so I said, what service do you, it was a cheat question, really. So I made them rank the current services, 1 to 15 or whatever.
So you're actually asking 45 questions in your 3, but okay.
Well, it was easy though. We did it using an app. There was a slider. It was,
That's awesome.
It wasn't too hard for them. So then and actually the winner was the cleaning team, and number 2 was the security team. Those are the 2 things they like most. Then we asked them if there was anything that really jumped out of our proposals for new activity, and we're hoping to increase our investment in security, and they were all very happy with that. And then we said, have you seen anything working really well elsewhere that you would like us to try in Bath? And there were no parameters. They could write whatever they wanted, and then they could upvote other people's, and it came out as a word cloud. And we had this word cloud that in the middle said public toilets. Who would have thought that in a city that allegedly welcomes 6 million visitors, the biggest concern for businesses is the absence of public toilets. But actually, quite often what will happen within a public toilet is that the contractors who come to do the cleaning will find that there's somebody comatose in the loo who's used it as a place to take drugs, and then they've said, this isn't safe, I don't want to come here anymore. And the police recommend then, well, just shut it down, because that's the easiest way to deal with it. You just shut the toilet down. So we've had 3 different sets of toilets shut down in the city centre. And so then people are desperate, they're coming to businesses, and there are 1 or 2 places that you can go. But that came up. So we're going to have to pick up that issue, because the businesses have told us loud and clear that it's something that we've got to look at. So what we're hoping to do, I'm meeting with the council later today to talk about it, but we're hoping to do like a community scheme where businesses will show a little sticker in their window to say, we're not going to tell you to go away if you ask to use our loo. And then there's a closed toilet, and it's actually really beautiful. It's got a feel of Moulin Rouge about it. It's got beautiful tiles on the outside. It's right next to the theatre, and it's in Monmouth Street. So I'm quite excited about trying to create a business plan to open what I would like to call the Duke of Monmouth's Privy, and make it a sort of, Regency experience, and with music of the period and decor that's kind of a bit unusual, so that it becomes a destination public convenience. And you have to pay to go in, but not a crazy amount, just enough to create a disincentive to anybody that would want to go in. And I'm hoping that if you were a junkie, listening to 18th century minuets might put you off. So you choose a different one for that activity, or a different place, or maybe get some help in an ideal world.
Right. Yeah. But that is a reality. The unhoused population, individuals with drug abuse, it's all unfortunately a reality. And I think
as a business owner in a downtown, in a Main Street community, I appreciate that somebody is there looking at these like for the greater good, because it ultimately helps me, even though I'm not retail, it helps me with employee retention and attraction, because people feel safe coming to work. They feel comfortable. They feel proud. So all of those pieces add up.
And seagulls is my other big issue.
Oh.
So seagulls are protected by special statute in the UK. So we're looking at. I understand the legislation far too well now. So I know what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And one of the things you could do is put nets on the roofs. But in a conservation city like Bath, you're not allowed to put nets on the roofs unless you get planning permission, which is expensive and painful and time consuming. So that's where my hope is. I don't know whether we'll pull it off, but my hope is that we can agree some kind of like a basic set of principles that say, if you put your netting up in this way, then you don't have to get planning permission. There will be a painful process to go through, but we could just go through it once and then have a citywide agreement that not having so many seagulls is good for the city, because it means that the stone isn't being damaged by the bird mess. So it's another way of protecting the city. And as long as you keep the net tight, you can't actually see it. So it'd be about maintenance and that sort of thing. So we're working with a chap in the town who does educational investments, academic investments, and he's working with a team from Scotland in the hope that we can use enhanced satellite imaging to work out exactly where all the nests are. So we're doing a mapping exercise at the moment. So that's where, tech affects us all.
Yeah.
So those are two very practical things that have come completely from the business community. And then as a city, obviously the two big developments are the rugby club. So the rugby club doesn't have, the rugby stadium doesn't have the capacity really to welcome as many supporters as it needs to. It won its league last year. So it's a hugely important building, and it's right in the middle of the city centre, which is perfect from a place management point of view. We've got history, we've got culture, and we've got sport, and we've got green spaces. We've kind of got everything. So we need to protect that. And then the other place, I don't know if you noticed it, but there's a car park. It used to have a multi-storey kind of 1970s car park on it right down by the river. And that has been earmarked to be a central business district. So we'll finally have a little business quarter down by the river. And then we're about to welcome, I don't know if you're coming on the 13th, but we're about to welcome thousands of people, all dressed in Jane Austen costumes for the Jane Austen Festival. And we know that 2,000 people have bought tickets to be in the promenade. And I'm imagining, from your audience perspective, it's a bit like the Disneyland parade. So everyone is dressed up, but they're all dressed in a bonnet. And they carry very authentic little umbrellas and little baskets. And it's very quaint. And for the whole of the fortnight of the festival, you bump into the Jane Austens, as we call them, but you'll bump into them in the supermarket and in the restaurant. It's like cosplay. People stay in costume for the whole period. So we know that there'll be those many people in the promenade. The tickets are all sold out, but we also know that a lot of people will just come and watch because it doesn't cost anything, because it just walks through the town. So it's just a different way to experience Bath. And there's balls and so the balls. One of the first balls sold out in 9 minutes. It's so popular. So book for next year, I would say.
Yes, it's definitely, the fall is a crazy time for work and, everything that we've got, here at home. But yes, Jane Austen, you can't show up in Bath and not see people walking around. But I can't imagine in a few, mid-September what the town is going to look like with that many magnified. Generally they're always, up around the circus or the Royal Crescent and where Jane, and the museum and stuff like that. But it's always so interesting to see when people really lean in. And I've never done a Comic-Con or even a Disney parade and dressed in any of that stuff. But but I love it when people lean in and want to fully immerse themselves in that experience.
Yeah, same. I think it's magical, and it's been going for a number of years, and it's just grown in popularity. So, but because it's the 250th, it would have been her 250th birthday. It's big this year, and we've got CNN coming to film.
Oh, well, hello.
Hello, yes, I know. Which is really I don't think they've ever been before. And hilariously, because Netflix filmed Bridgerton, bits of Bridgerton in Bath, somebody showed the Netflix team some footage of this promenade, as we call it, the parade. And they said, "Oh, I don't remember us doing that." And she said, "No, you didn't do that for a film. That's real people dressed up, having fun, doing this crazy thing." So there we are. That's us.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. As I have watched Bridgerton, and I did watch Bridgerton a few years ago when it first came out, but I've been rewatching little bits of it, seeing it through like a more local, I use air quotes for local, but local perspective. And I'm like, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that house. I know that store. I know that shop. I know that thing. And so it does. If you have a minute to to dive in, it will take you more than a minute, but it is a fun experience when something like that happens in your town, in your community to watch. And I mean, we could go down a whole other path of the film industry. I'm curious if you just have a few takeaways on what that film industry experience is like, or if you work with them at all when they are in town.
So the last time Netflix filmed in the area of town where your flat is, actually, which is the kind of historic bit where they filmed the market for the Bridgerton, or the kind of trading place. They were having a lot of trouble with one particular shop owner who said, "I'm going to play music at top volume," and then because he thought, what happens is they'll pay businesses to use their premises or to use the outside of their premises, or to pay them to protect them from the disruption and the lost business. But I think what happened in the year between the first time they came and the second time they came was the gossip went mad, and certain businesses apparently did very well out of it. I don't even know that I believe actually that they did as well as they said. But then, so everyone, then just the game was on, like, how much more can I ask for? And I know that certain bits, they now don't come to Bath to film because people just got a bit greedy. But it is really exciting when we get a bit of filming. Everybody got really beside themselves when they filmed a bit of the Wonka film in Bath.
Mm-hmm.
And Timothée Chalamet was in town. And suddenly the town was full of teenage women. And and I got a phone call at 6:00. I was the last one in the office, from the council saying that we're having to close the road because there's so many people in this busy road trying to watch in the park. You know, the park that's down the steps. He was filming down there. And so they were all in the road above because they weren't allowed into the park where the filming was happening, but they just stopped the traffic. That was it. So the council has a whole team to sort of coordinate that sort of thing, because it's worth quite a lot of money to the either the properties themselves or the council, or then the ongoing visit value. So people do come and do, the nostalgia tour, you see tour guides doing a sort of, and this is where they filmed, you will hear that, I imagine, from your flat quite a lot, but
quite a lot, yes.
Sometimes I think they make it up as well, but I think that it's really important for the city, the film industry, and and again, that's where you've got students at Bath Bar, and there's a really good film studio for doing the indoor work in between Bath and Bristol. And Bristol is a really important film location. It's where the BBC wildlife films are made, and the Wallace and Gromit films are made. They come from Bristol. So there's actually, again, lots of expertise in the region for people to, if you need jobbing freelancers, you can find them in the region. And there's a really strong Bottle Yard Studios, it's called, really great studios. So it's all very synergistic. And I think that happens a lot in the southwest of the UK. We are all a bit kind of a family. It's quite a close-knit part of the country. I think that's what happens down here.
Oh, it's so good. And it's so fun. My gosh, we've gone in such a circle talking about, tourists and visitors and residents and all of those different things. And then just the day to day of running a bid and what that looks like. And, truly, I can imagine not every minute, certainly every day or week is the same. But to be working on some of these projects that some you can probably get done relatively quickly, and others, like your toilet project, are going to take a little bit longer time to plan and get funding and permits and, implement. And then, how do we get people to, change patterns and use them, and taking some of the um, pressure off of the businesses that are supporting and kind of covering us right as we are right now. So it's interesting. It's interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything I know I think we could just sit here and chit chat all day long, but I was curious if there was anything that you were like, oh, I hope Sandy asks me about such and such. Is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners today? Either those that are, most of our listeners are in this economic development space, I can't imagine, but we're all also visitors at heart. So is there anything that you'd like to share?
One of our big success stories it has been the business conference, and I haven't talked to you about that. And that's where the posters that you liked came from. So basically, that was born out of conversations with businesses who said that it was really difficult for them to feel part of the conversation. So in true bid spirit, I think I said, well, let us make the conversation and then invite the people that you would like to talk to in, rather than waiting to be invited to their conversation. So we created this Bath business, very confidently called the Bath Business Conference, because I thought, stick my flag in. And we've been running it 3 years. It's going to be its fourth one in November this year. And interestingly, year 3 was a real pivot moment where people came to me and said, I've seen what you do with this business conference and I'd like to invest. Just like, great. So that's, I think there's a magic. So if anything I've learned is that there seems to be a magic. You do things 3 times and people have confidence in them. And I don't know why, but that's happened over and over again. So the first year they go, yeah, flash in the pan. Second year, oh, she's done it again, or they've pulled it off again. So then the third year people like it. But we talk about the really big issues that the bid can't necessarily fix. But we do get really good engagement from the council who come and listen. And some policies have changed as a result of conversations that we've had either in the conference or in the business breakfasts that we use to kind of back them up. And that's been really good for our profile as an economic development organisation. It's very easy for people to just go, oh, they do the cleaning. And actually, it's really important for us to stand up for the business voices that we're hearing day in and day out and make sure that we're creating opportunities for them to be heard. So you'd be very welcome. The next one's on November the 19th, and it's called A Successful City. What is a successful city? So, I think because it's always nice to have the words Bath Business Improvement District and success in the same sentence. So there we are. That's the only thing that I haven't talked about, but that is a great thing that we do.
That is awesome. I am working. One of our projects is with the Main Street Maryland, the group of main streets in Maryland. We're playing in the Main Street Maryland conference, and this is state government, Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development supports this main street, or all of the main streets in Maryland. And so we're doing the second annual conference. I love the things happening. Need to be 3s to be successful, but the first one was last year. We're doing the next one in October, and we move it around the state into these communities and kind of share stories of what worked, what didn't work, where are some challenges, what did I learn from, how can I be thinking. It's so important to collaborate, to give your space, your mind, your head space time to not just do the work, but to create and dream and think about how you could be solving a current problem or the next thing.
Lifting your head up to the horizon kind of thing, isn't it? That, yeah. No, and we always are quite playful in our conference. shame, and you could call it gimmicky, but I like to call it playful, so that people can see it as a day out of the office where they learn something, they're inspired, but they also have fun. And it means that you can come alone as a business owner, if you're just a small business owner, and you know that if you don't know anybody in the room, by the end of the day you will know some people in the room, because we will have made you do some slightly silly things, or maybe, and just more playful things, and like having someone draw the minutes instead of just, doing a big report.
Yes, I loved it. So the last question that we ask all of our podcast guests is, as the name dictates, it's EDO Breakthrough is the name of the podcast. And so the last question we ask is, what was your economic development breakthrough? Have you had that aha moment in economic development over your career?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question. Sometimes the easiest things to break through are things that seem really impossible, and then you go, oh, all I actually had to do was ask, and then I could make that thing happen. So we did have something there were a homeless couple. It was the first thing I was told I had to do. So I got my job, and the board said to me, right, we've got a month. There's a homeless couple right in the centre of the city. They're in a vacant shop, and they put a mattress in the doorway. They would sit up, read their newspapers. They were really ostentatiously sort of, disrespecting the city centre. They were leaving a lot of litter, but also doing it really, really visibly. And all I did, I say, but I just went and knocked on doors. So I went to the homeless charity and said, what are you doing for this couple? Why aren't you housing them? And they said, well, they don't like the accommodation that we've got. They'd really like to live in a shared house that's a bit more independent than a hostel. We have got a shared house, but we don't normally let couples stay together. But we could try that. And it was just like, because I asked, they thought they would try it. And so the couple got housing. We agreed dates with them. We talked to the landlord of the empty property and the empty property on the other side of the road, because I didn't want them to just leave one side of the road and move to the other side. So we boarded up the other side of the road, and we made it look beautiful. It had really nice decals on the front. So it wasn't an aggressive boarding up, keep away. It was a sort of, let's make the street look tidy. And we did that the week before the couple was supposed to be being rehoused. So everybody knew when it was all going to happen. It was all very transparent. I know their names. We did talk to them. And I guess because of our intervention, which was business led, the neighbouring businesses were hopping mad. They'd had quite enough of this outside their doorways, but it needed a humane solution. And we found one, and we persuaded the homeless charity to work in a slightly different way that worked for this couple. And that was a bit of a sort of, oh, I actually have power, but it's only the power to ask the question, which is, I guess there we are. That was a good story.
That's beautiful, Allison. I love it. I mean, yes, you didn't need to overcomplicate things. You just needed to ask.
Yeah.
Wow. This was so good. So many insane insights. I love it. I cannot wait to get back to my next visit to Bath. And I'll ask our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the EDO Breakthrough, share it with a colleague, leave a review. But until next time, I'm Sandy Dubé. Thank you all for listening.
The EDO Breakthrough podcast is brought to you by PPR Strategies. PPR Strategies, standing for People and Places Reimagined, is a strategic consulting firm working specifically with EDOs and other place-based organizations. We share the unique stories of communities through communication, strategic planning, marketing, media relations, and more. Visit us at pprstrategies.com and find our contact information in the show notes. I'd like to give a big thank you to you for listening. Remember, together we are unstoppable.